don't think he's that good. And I think technically Conor Benn is better. I don't think technically he's great, but what he has got, fair play to him, is big cojones and a big heart. The difference is Conor Benn's not rematching for the money. Conor Benn is rematching for revenge.
Charlotte Daly on Mail Sport Boxing, joined by Eddie Hearn. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm intrigued by that press conference that we just saw, which was probably one of the wildest things I've ever seen. But that's the world of Mr. Eubank. We're definitely not living in it. I'm not anyway. And I'm looking forward to coming back here November 15th and hopefully seeing Conor Benn put things right.
Yeah, let's talk about that press conference to start with. There's always fireworks. We saw it in the build-up to the first fight. But it's slightly different this time. He was really taking aim at you specifically and at Matchroom. What did you make of the accusations regarding the ambulance?
I'll be honest with you, like, Chris is normally quite sharp. I thought it was, one, it was a poor performance, and two, it was bizarre. I mean, the accusations that he made, I mean, I'm not really that kind of legal guy that's like, right, but what you cannot do is lie about, and make accusations about me and my company about stopping an ambulance. I mean, it's the most bizarre thing. You stopped the ambulance from taking me away. I mean, he doesn't even know that with the British Boxing Board of Control, there's a log from the paramedics that tell you exactly what happens minute by minute. And if you don't really have a brain or you're not that switched on, you're listening to Eubank and believing what he's saying. He called Robert Smith a scumbag and a toad. This is Secretary of the British Boxing Board of Control. He made Conor Benn wear gloves that were not allowed. Total rubbish. They made us weigh in at this amount. That was in your contract. I just felt like the mask was slipping. And as for the toenails falling off, that was an opportunity for me to go, this is just too much now. That's enough. And I knew he wasn't going to let me. There was a few things that I wanted to say personally up there, not around the fight. And I even told him that, and he still wouldn't let me talk. And I don't know. I didn't like what I heard from up there from him. I thought he was just trying to be too clever. And for us, I want to build a fight, and I want everybody to get excited. But at the same time, for Conor Benn, I just saw a guy that was like, "Can I go back to camp now? I don't want to talk to this idiot. I just want to train and try and get it right this time and get redemption."
Before we move on from this and actually talk about the fight, what is your account then of what did happen with the ambulances? What do you want to...
Firstly, the paramedics work with the British Boxing Board of Control. They will go in and assess the fighter and decide whether he needs to go to hospital or not. Clearly, everybody decided he needed to go to hospital. What happens there is absolutely nothing to do with me. That's the British Boxing Board of Control and the paramedics, and that whole process is logged. It's a very serious, moment. And Frank Smith, who works for me, was in the changing room with Chris Eubank and his family, making sure that everything was all right, because he was concerned about him as well. We haven't worked, and my dad hasn't worked his whole life to build a reputation in sport and in boxing that's extremely well respected, to have some knob come up there, and that's the best word for him, honestly. So I don't know if that's a bad word or not. I don't know if the Daily Mail will allow knob, but
bleep it.
I think knob's all right. I think that's a fair word for him to just make up rubbish, and he's got to retract it, but he won't because he's so arrogant, And the stuff about Robert Smith was absolutely wild. Yes, I think I agree with one of his points about And by the way, the board donate money to boxers and retired boxers' funds. I think some transparency would be good. But you can't go out there and start calling the Secretary of the British Boxing Board of Control a toad and a scumbag, because he actually hasn't done anything wrong. He says, the weigh-in last time, everyone was in the room. That's just what happens. He was over an hour late for his weigh-in. That's why he wasn't allowed to take weight off or have longer than what the time was, which was 30 minutes or something. I was in the room. He couldn't make weight, and he went on his phone. He was just scrolling Instagram. They told him to take the weight off, and he was just his normal arrogant self. He was like, no, and then gets on. He thought he was going to make it, and he missed it by 0.01 of an ounce. So, I don't know, it's tiring, but you got to back yourself. And, I was disappointed to hear that he lost half a toenail. That was tragic. I'm listening to it going, you've really gone for the toenail. David Haye went for the toe a little while ago. The toenail was another level.
Look, Chris in the build-up to the first fight was doing everything he could to get under Conor's skin, and some would say that he was successful in doing so. Do you think that that's what he's trying to achieve already now, just starting with the mind games?
Honestly, like in the first fight, Conor was so wound up from the first press conference. I mean, don't forget, Eubank hit Conor with an egg at the first press conference. So obviously that's not going to go down that great. This time, not interested in buying any of it. Conor was so calm up there. He didn't even like, normally you see him get really agitated and emotional. He don't like the guy. He just wants to go away, get back into camp and put a performance together. That's what he wants to do. And I think he was very pleased with today's press conference because he thought Eubank was waffling like just mad stuff. But also at the same time, he didn't lose his rag. He drives home tonight, he gets a good night's sleep, and camp continues. And he's got to put a job together on November 15th. It's going to be brutal and violent, but just a little bit more technical. Don't just fight with pure emotion all the time. You can outbox this guy as well when you mix in with the violence. And last time was a big moment for Conor, and might have been just a little bit too much with him with everything that went on and the inactivity. And hopefully this time things will be different.
You say there about not fighting with too much emotion, and that's something Conor said himself. But how hard is it to change that when especially he really dislikes Chris Eubank Jr. and he's innately emotional when he fights with all of his fights?
He's a Ben, isn't he? So we're not like, it's like saying to Nigel Benn, don't fight off emotion. Like ultimately that's what made Nigel Benn what he is, and that's what makes Conor Benn what he is. He's ferocious. So we don't want to lose that, but we just want to be a little bit smarter at times. Don't just hold your feet and, like his dad said. So, I mean, his dad's a bit too honest, isn't he? I mean, especially his story about the sauna and shower. I don't know where that was going, but it was like, those two are a great pair, But Tony Sims will be saying to him, let's just box as well at times. You don't just need to swing from your hips. You can hurt this guy. You can be precise in there, and we can be much better. And Eubank knows he's in for a big fight. That's why he's brought Bomac in. Like, if he really didn't think this was much of a fight, I don't think he'd bother. But he knows. He knows how brutal that last fight was, and he knows this next fight's going to be a tough, dangerous fight for him.
Do you think Chris can get better, though? Because you've said before you don't think that Conor showed half of what he was capable of showing, and he's obviously going to try and bring that on fight night for the rematch. But do you think Chris has another level?
I think Chris is Chris. I don't think technically he's great, but what he has got, fair play to him, is big cojones and a big heart. And he showed that. He's a tough man. But at the end of the day, I don't think he's that good. And I think technically Conor Benn is better. Now, if you don't show your quality and you just want to have a tear up, sometimes you come out on top, sometimes you don't. After 10 rounds, that fight was anybody's. And Eubank won 11 and 12 and won the fight. But it didn't have to be like that if Conor was a little bit smarter at times. We're not going to take away the ferociousness, the emotion. We're just going to be a little bit smarter.
Yeah, we say about that ferocious side because one of the things that made that first fight so epic was the fact that hands were just flying everywhere. Yeah. It wasn't technically the best fight we've witnessed, but it really grabbed the attention of the fans. We're now saying that obviously Conor is going to try and be more technical, and then we've got Bomac coming in with Chris Eubank Jr. Do you think it's going to be a completely different fight?
No, but I think it might start slightly differently. Like, I think, both guys obviously dislike each other, and when things unravel, again, you always revert to type. But I don't think, one thing it won't be, because neither of them fight like that, is it won't be technical. Do you know what I mean? It will just be a little bit more precise in the work. So the punches, you still throw the same number of punches, but you just think about what you're doing, rather than just swinging away from anywhere and walking onto shots. And I know it was enthralling. This will be as well. Yeah. But it might just, the quality might be a little bit higher with the drama.
Chris has already taken to social media to say that he's looking for Terence Crawford in 2026.
It's just hilarious.
Do you think he's just completely disregarding this?
Deluded is what he is. I mean, look, he beat Conor Benn, who is a welterweight, right? And he's my fighter. Conor Benn is still levels behind Terence Crawford. Everybody is, apart from maybe a handful of fighters in the world. Chris Eubank against Terence Crawford at the moment, it's just a mismatch, right? You have to be good enough, but you have to have that kind of experience. Conor Benn will return after this fight to welterweight. I think he'll fight Lewis Crocker for the world title. And then he will build his own career and resume and experience to hopefully one day be able to take on the likes of Terence Crawford. It's levels apart at the moment. And you know what? Eubank's not really about legacy or fighting the best. He just wants the money. And that's why he's back here rematching Conor Benn. The difference is Conor Benn's not rematching for the money. Conor Benn is rematching for revenge. And that makes you a lot more dangerous when you won the first fight and you're just like, I'll go and do it again. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Conor's not coming with that kind of energy to this fight.
Look, before we wrap this up, you didn't get the opportunity to say what you wanted to say on stage about Ricky Hatton.
Yeah.
I would love to hear what.
Yeah, I just feel like it's so important. You know, that's a platform. There's a lot of people watching, and I think it's really important that people understand the importance that this guy had to British boxing and to people individually. Like, as you saw up there, it's quite a toxic business, and in a toxic business, for no one to have ever said a bad word about Ricky Hatton just shows you what kind of individual he was. And he was like the last of a rare breed of boxers and athletes who built their popularity without social media. You know, not with a content team that follow him around going, film this will look good for the image. Just a pure soul with a clean heart that a city fell in love with and then a country fell in love with as well. And a guy that gave all his time to anyone. Doesn't matter if it was a CEO of a broadcast company or if it was a guy, you know, helping clean up around here or whatever. The same individual. And in a world where he really needed to help himself, he always chose to help others first.
Yeah.
And we saw that even recently. I mean, it's so heartbreaking to see, you know, videos in the last week or 2 weeks of him sending videos to people that are struggling, saying, look, keep at it, mate, keep fighting. And it's like, you know, you see the statement from the family as if to say, his bags are packed, he was going away, and, you know, and it's like people don't really know what's happening underneath the mask. And I feel like there's a real stigma of, you know, particularly with men, I feel, and particularly who work in businesses like this or are fighters and stuff like that. It's not the done thing to show weakness. And I know that everyone says about you've got to talk, but people just don't.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're afraid to talk or they're embarrassed to talk or, you know, all those kind of things. And Ricky was like a beacon of hope to those people. But yet he could, you know, even he didn't talk all the time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And he was a guy that on the outset had everything, was one of the most adored fighters and sportsmen of all time in Britain, had a great family. He was a promoter, he was a manager, he was a trainer, he was a pundit, he was training for this exhibition fight. All the things that to the outset, to people looking in would go, God, what a life he's got.
Yeah.
Yet still he couldn't find happiness, you know? And that's what I wanted to get across today, was just be conscious of the whole, you need to talk about it. Sometimes people just don't.
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, like to see a guy that's that funny and that full of life and, you know, that good around people and that good a role model and with that good a heart, not being able to you know, like we say, get rid of those demons, it's so sad. You know, for Campbell, his son, who, you know, we represent his whole career, for Matthew, you know, for the whole family. Like, I see it today walking around. You can see on people's faces who knew him, they feel sick.
Yeah.
You know? So that's what I wanted to say. But, like, you know, it is what it is. Maybe it wasn't the right time. But I just feel like it's important to talk about it on a platform like that.
I couldn't agree more. And yeah, love goes out to his family and the boxing world at this time. But thank you, Eddie.